this book is called Orchot Tzaddikim. You heard?
Orchot
Tzaddikim.
Tzaddikim.
You heard this book before? You know who wrote it?
No.
I don't think anybody does. It's sort of one of those anonymous books that has gone through the generations, and we're not really sure who wrote it, but it was somebody very important. So you know who wrote it? The Orchot Tzaddikim wrote it. Like, you know, it's interesting. In Judaism, we call the book after the fellow who wrote it, the person who wrote it, like the Chavis Chaim. It wasn't his name. What you know what his name was? Yisroel Meir Kagan. So why call him the Chavis Chaim? Because that was the book he wrote. So why do you think in Judaism we call the person by his book?
To focus on the work and not the person.
Focus on the, okay.
Accomplishment comes from Hashem. We don't want to make an idol out of a scholar.
But I would say another, that I hear what you're saying. I would say even further that we won't read the book if the person's not holding by what he wrote. You could have a famous philosopher that gives a class, and writes books and everything in university. But, you could find him drunk on the street corner. And if the person who wrote the book wasn't holding by what he wrote, so that would be a hypocrite and we wouldn't read the book.
Yeah, it seems like a book that you read, not a book that you learn. Like, is that
it's like a Musa book. But I'm saying that if the person is not holding by the book that he wrote, as opposed to the secular world, you don't expect any lofty things from a university professor that he has to live by his creed that he's writing in life philosophy or something. You wouldn't be shocked if he was a drunk or something like that. He's writing lofty things. And Judaism is not like that. And there have been people, even in our generation, who have written amazing things, but we found that the person himself is not by there, and you won't find it in the bookstores around here, his books. So the first chapter is the Shah Rishon, is the Shah HaGaiva. What Gaiva means? Anybody? Gaiva means self-centeredness, egotistic.
Shah is like a chapter, no?
Gaiva means somebody. Gaiva means like he's egotistic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The Shah gate.
Yeah. So that's what. The whole book is one gate after the next, and hopefully, when you complete it, so you're a wonderful person in the Jewish world. Right. So I'd like to ask, what you think in definition of egotistic is, and what does it mean a humble person? So there's two opposites, right? A person who's humble is not egotistic. So, like in my own mind, in my own mind, when I think of a humble person, coming from the USA, so I think of somebody that's very, very quiet, and he doesn't really, lift up his voice, and he doesn't have, too much to do with other people, and you just see, he's like, humble, do you think that's the Jewish approach?
No.
And why isn't that the Jewish approach?
Because that's more being shy than being humble.
Shy. Oh, okay. So it's interesting. Humble and shy don't mean the same thing.
You recognize your strengths and weaknesses.
Right. Because the Torah actually testifies that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person on the face of the world. Now, who was Moshe Rabbeinu? He went to Paro and he said, "Let my people go," and he, went into the palace, and there were rebellions, and he had to, stand up for Judaism, for the Torah. So he wasn't a humble person. I mean, he wasn't a wimpy person. He wasn't a shy person. He was a humble person. So that's an interesting point. Like a person says, who am I? How can I do anything? So that's not necessarily a humble person. It could be that he's just shy or he's lazy. It's like, but he might just justify it. He might justify it by saying, "Oh, I'm humble." Like he's playing the humble thing. But it could be he's just, like shy, or he's lazy. He doesn't want to do things. So the first gate, in order to prepare ourselves to be great people, is the Shar Gaiva. Shar Gaiva means, Gaiva, what did we say it meant? No, the Shar means the gate. The first gate is Shar HaGaiva. It means self-centeredness. Selfishness. Egotistic, right. Okay, so we'll just see this inside. Hagaiva hi amatbeya asher pasal melech hagadol. So, egotistic personality is a coin, let's say, that the great king took out of circulation. In Israel we have this, when I first came to Israel we had liras. You never heard of a lira? Lirot?
Lira, yeah.
And then we had shekels. And now we have new shekels.
Lira is not Israeli currency though, it's, can't remember which currency, but it's on that game Travel, a very old board game.
Well, 40 years ago that's what they had. They had lirot. And then they had shekels, and then they had new shekels, right?
Why
so,
did they keep on changing it?
Because the money, after a while, just has no value. So they just change it. But that's new. That's a brand new one. That's crispy.
So this is new.
That's
Yeah,
a new. That's right. A new shekel, right? So here he starts off saying that God, meaning the Melech HaGadol, he took it out of circulation. This type of he's using a, like a. Matbeya is like a coin. So it says that God took out of circulation. How would you say in a better way in English? Like.
What do you take out of circulation?
In other words, he says it's no longer. It's not usable. It's not usable anymore, right? So gaiva is something that God, using the comparison of a coin that has been taken out of circulation. And also v'hisiro leha toraso, and God and He warned us. In other words, God warned us in the Torah. He warned us in the Torah that we shouldn't be egotistic. Now, what causes a person to be egotistic psychologically? Let's think about this, because actually, this is very bad to be egotistic in Judaism. Huh?
Success.
His own success.
God hates haughtiness.
Right. No, but so how? Oh, so you want to say when a person is successful, so then he
doesn't automatically win. He has to work. He has to focus on not becoming.
Right.
It's something that you have to focus on when.
What kind of success?
I'm saying, if you come in,
business.
Let's say you come into a large sum of money.
Right.
You have to be careful that doesn't overcome.
Right. Have you noticed that?
Huh?
Have you noticed that when people become very wealthy, that they become very egotistic?
Yeah, I haven't noticed.
Start thinking that
because you have to know the person before to know.
Yeah.
I've actually read stories now that people that make a lot of money actually it's turning into that they're going back to work instead of getting out of work.
Yeah, of course. So they'll be bored otherwise.
And yeah.
Oh,
I've always
right.
said that I would always work no matter how much money I have.
Right.
But certainly it can cause a big, huge ego problem in a lot of people.
Right. I've noticed people. It's a real problem because if he has money, so nobody wants to, give him any type of direction in life because they're afraid he's going to offend, and then they won't come anymore to your functions or even to your shul. So, it's okay, I can come late for shul, I can talk during davening, they understand me, and he could do wrong things, totally, and people just hold on, this guy, he's giving a lot of money to this organization, what I'm saying? And actually it's his detriment because really, he has a false image of himself, and he's living in a fantasy, and he thinks everybody's his friend, and everybody thinks he's so witty, and really they're thinking, oh, this guy is he's on his own trip. But so anyway, what does he say? So anything that he's going to say, he has to back up with a Torah concept, because that's what we did actually when he wrote this book. He had a point. He's going to talk about egotistic people, and how bad it is. So what does he do? He gleans from all the different sentences in the Torah or in the prophets or in the Talmud, and he backs up this whole idea. So this is a Jewish approach based upon, the Torah concept of the problem of people that's egotistic. Now, first of all, he brings down a sentence in the book of Deuteronomy that actually God warns us. You see, this is the second line here, the end. Hishameh lecha, be careful, pen tishkach et arnoi lehecha, lest you forget God. See? So he forgets God because he's in charge. He has all this finance. So because a person, he forgets his creator. Now that's the Chavetz Chaim, the famous Chavetz Chaim. So he made a will before he passed away before World War II. And he made a will saying that none of his children would marry very wealthy people. That's what it used to be in Europe. If you're a famous rabbi, everybody wanted to get into your family. So I knew one of my rabbis, his son married the granddaughter of the Chavetz Chaim. And he was wealthy. So what happened? This story, the rabbi told me. He said that...
You with her first.
No, so first of all, he was a very big Torah scholar, the rabbi that I knew. And he actually was English. Ariel Kalmel Zatzal just passed away a few years ago. I don't know if we have his books up in the library. It's Strive for Truth and other books like that. And right, which right. So he was a student of Rabbi Dessler, and he compiled the book. In other words, Rabbi Dessler didn't write Miktav Miliyahu. Rabbi Carmel did with another rabbi who was a student of Rabbi Dessler was a famous rabbi in Gateshead and also in Bnei Brak, in Panovich. So anyway, it was suggested, that Rabbi Carmel's son was going to marry the Chavetz Chaim's granddaughter, and Rabbi Carmel was successful businessman in Manchester. So what did they do? So the family had a powwow. Can they allow this to happen? Because the grandfather, the Chavetz Chaim, said no. So Rabbi Carmel said that after being in Israel for a few years and having a few children getting married, he wasn't as affluent as he was in the old days, and the family had nothing to worry about. That's what happened. They say if you want to be a millionaire in Israel, come with 2 million, right? Right. But it's a challenge. When you have a lot of money, the Torah actually tells us, and that's why the Chavetz Chaim was careful that he put in his will that none of his grandchildren would marry into very wealthy families, because if you have a lot of money, the Torah says, guard yourself, lest you forget God, because actually that can cause a person to forget his creator. Now he goes further, reading, Ubekocha v'tzoncha, so your cattle and your sheep, yirbu'un, you're going to multiply. You're going to have a lot of the kesef v'zahav, yirbu'lecha, and you're going to have a lot of silver and gold. What happens immediately? Ram levavecha, your heart is going to be uplifted. Hey, I'm so brilliant, I'm so smart. Ram levavecha v'shachachta es Adonai Elohecha, and then you're going to forget God. Now this is a famous sentence that people are quoting. V'mata b'levavcha, you're going to say in your heart, Kochi v'otzem yadi es asali et ha'chayil hazeh, that my strength and the might of my hand caused me to be valiant in this situation. Right? So that's what happens. So the Torah is warning us, when we're coming into Israel, that don't forget that you have a God, because you might be prone to forget because you have all of this wealth that I'm giving you. So that's a test. Most people in the world are looking forward to becoming very, very wealthy. They don't say, oh, I can't handle it, It's too much money. I'll give it all away. But it's a test, there are religious people who are extremely wealthy, and they're very modest people, and I've met them, and they've been written up in international magazines, like this fellow has billions of dollars and he lives in a very modest house and he has, a normal car.
Yeah, no, I know someone that's worth about.
Who's that?
Warren Buffett also.
Oh, he also lives very modestly?
He has the same office that he started in when he started trading decades and decades ago.
Wow.
There's actually a guy that lives quite near to me. He's worth about $500 million.
Who's that?
There's a guy, I'm not sure his name. He lives about he's worth about £500 million. He's he's in like top 100 or something.
Uh-huh. You know him personally?
No, but I know someone that knows
Too bad.
him.
I need a new couch.
And he drives a 15-year-old car.
Right.
He's like, you wouldn't know.
Right, there are some people in the world have a sickness also, that they're very miserly. I'm not saying this particular person.
No, like shlochi, just...
Right. No, there are some people that are sick that will never spend any money. He talks about this also. There was also a negative personality trait that the Torah talks about.
Stinginess, but he's not
Right. No, I'm not saying he doesn't need it. So
Yeah.
But in the Jewish world, quite often, if the person is steeped in learning of Torah, so he doesn't really need it. There's a very big philanthropic family, and they give around $60 million a year to different outreach projects. And like I say, the Wolfson family, it's known. Right? Zev Wolfson passed away a few years ago, and somebody saw him on a plane, and he was flying the regular coach. He could buy the airline, you know what I mean? So they asked him, they said, Mr. Wolfson, why don't you go first class? He says, I don't know the difference. I don't need it. It's funny, but he didn't need it, But that's that's a humbleness that's a positive approach to, and I have better things to do with my money. I don't need the frills. I'm happy as it is. So we have to be careful that we don't forget our Creator when we have the good days. Now this sentence that I mentioned, that my strength and the strength of my hands generated this value that I have is a problem in all different types of societies, especially here in Israel. I mentioned this yesterday, that when there's a war in Israel, everybody's saying, "Wow, it was God." But there are some people that go around and say, "We're invincible. We're the little Davids," And it was only because of our strength and our wit, and but actually, that's like a kick in the head. God is doing all these wonderful things for us, and then you say, "Well, it's because I'm so brilliant." So that's a very dangerous thing. Is
that like the Israelis saying that's the IDF and not like the people studying Torah, but in hand it's like probably both of them?
Right. You have to give credit to the people that are in the army. You have to give credit for the people that are bringing the holiness in the land. But there are people that just say, "Why we won? Because we have, because I'm so brilliant and I'm such a good soldier." In anything that happens, not only in the army but other things also, that causes problems. It causes, and the Torah warns on that. And that sentence that I just quoted you has been quoted many times, because when you hear some of these generals talking about how they won this war or whatever it is. So okay, anyway, so the Torah goes along in the same book of Deuteronomy, and it says, "V'chates Adonai Elohecha," and you should remember God, because He's the one that gave you strength in order to be valueless. So ultimately speaking, however great a soldier is, but where is his life strength coming from? it's pretty amazing that, okay, going further, V'melech Ne'ema, now this is talking about the king of Israel. There's actually a sentence that describes how a king of Israel should be. Baruch Hashem, the first kings that we had in Israel were wonderful. You started off with Shaul, then you had David and Shlomo, then afterwards we went downhill. Right? Sometimes better, many times worse. But it says about the king, the Torah actually has, Bilti Ram Levavo Yaakov, he should not lift up his heart above his fellow brothers. He's chosen to be the king, which is a high position, but the Torah specifically says he shouldn't lift up his heart. Now, if the Torah is warning about the king, that he shouldn't be egotistic and lift up his heart among others, so all the more so us simple people. So the Torah really is underlying this idea that egotism is very, very bad. It's sort of like saying that you're in charge. As soon as that comes into a mind or into a personality, he's pushing away Hashem. Most wealthy people that I've met that are honest say they were at the right time at the right place. They don't even know how they did it. They met somebody and they opened up a company, and all of a sudden they're a partner in this huge company. And they had the right breaks at the right time. Certain things, because you have many brilliant people who have PhDs in business and finance, and they don't make it. And sometimes you have a guy who, when you talk to him, you think he's an imbecile, but he made a lot of money somehow. So however Hashem gives a person's panasa, that's the word in Hebrew, for his sustenance, for his money. So there's a reason for it, however it works. And we just have to attempt to do the best. You can't expect miracles, like gold coins falling from heaven. But on the other side, you don't have to be a workaholic and ruin your family and be totally dedicated. I had a student here at Orchot years ago. He was originally Russian, and he lived in New York. And he got involved with finance, and besides real estate, so he was on the stock exchange in New York and in Japan. So he said to me, Rabbi, how can I pray? How can I go to Minyan? Because, what's the difference in time between New York and Japan? Do you know? I don't know. I could look it up. So in the middle of the night, even, he got phone calls saying, yeah. So in the middle of the night, he says he's available all the time. It's enough for him, Shabbos, he's trying to work on Shabbos, but yeah. So he gets calls, in the middle of the night, buy and sell, you're going to lose. So he said, how can I take a time every day to pray 3 times a day that I don't answer my phone? It's a challenge. But, so I took him to one of our famous rabbis in Orchot who had a good approach. So he said, well, what does God want from you? Let's talk. What is it? You have a mitzvah to pray. So God gave you a mitzvah to pray. You're going to lose from it? This is in a larger scheme, about Shabbos and keeping the holidays also, But, and there are some people, Orchot has offices in New York, there's some people that learned with very wealthy businessmen, and they have like once a week, twice a week, whatever they can get. And this big industrialist tells the secretary, I'm not getting any phone calls for the next hour, I'm busy. Now, the same thing could happen to him, you're going to lose $50,000 if you don't put your money from here to there. But he realizes that he has to learn also. Everybody, has to have their time to do. you know, depends on what situation they're in, but the minimal things of praying, you know, and keeping Shabbos and the holidays. So ultimately speaking, you know, and there's also a mitzvah of kovei itin b'Torah that you have to set times to learn. And you know, if you're a doctor and you're doing surgeries in Israel, even they get tens of thousands of dollars to make surgeries you're doing privately. So if you're a doctor and you say, okay, I'm learning for this hour, I will not take any surgeries now. You know, it costs them $10,000. You know, it's pretty. It's hard for us to imagine that. You know, but ultimately speaking, that's the right thing to do. So now, where is a person showing his haughtiness? You see, where is he showing that? How does a person? What situations would a person show his haughtiness? He actually says it's two, so I made it easier. So how does it come out, the fact that he's egotistic in his personality? Right. So you want to say in his physical belongings. He buys a new, Bentley or something.
Or he accomplishes something, or he's like a famous scholar.
Oh, so now you want to say because of his. You see, giving me a whole different definition, which is good.
That's high in Torah.
Right.
But kind of a greatness or accomplishment.
Right. So in other words, a person can be conceited because of his wealth, or because of his, let's say, his mind.
Aptitude.
Yeah, his mind, how he developed, or how brilliant he thinks he is. So let's see what he says here. This is the second paragraph. So gaiva, this conceit, is split into two. You see, now we're taking it like a piece of Gemara. If the Torah just said, don't be egotistic, so if you don't break it down and realize how it defines, so it doesn't hit home. So here we're saying that there are two situations. Echad gaivas adam begufo. One is in his goof, in his body. He thinks he's so muscular, he's so handsome, whatever. V'chelek sheni gaivas adam b'malas hachachma v'masav. And the second is the conceit that a person might have in the heights of his wisdom and his acts. So you guys hit it. That was good. So those are the only two things that a person has really on his physical possessions, or his body, physical, or on his wisdom and his acts. Okay, now he doesn't stop here. We have another 2 minutes. So now he splits it down again. Now, okay, so you have it in the body. Okay, now this splits into two situations. So echad tov, echad ra. Now one is good and one is bad. So there is a positive situation about being conscientious about himself and caring about himself, like we spoke about earlier. If a person is stingy and he doesn't have any self-pride, so then that's also bad. And of course, if he's self-centered and in his physicality, so then that's a negative thing. Basically, the idea is, this is a Musa book. This is helping us develop our personalities. And what happens is, when we go over these things and we put it to heart, so eventually it breaks the heart that we have of stone, and it sort of melts it down, and then we become better people. But it's important to be involved with it, not the whole day, but just a little bit, a half hour. Every yeshiva has a Musa Seder. Every Sephardic yeshiva, Hasidic, whatever, Lithuanian, whatever it is, and they spend a certain amount of time, in self-development.